Welcome. My name is John Brunswick. I'm going to talk about 10 digital marketing essentials for technologists. As technologists, we have an opportunity to improve the quality and accuracy of the solutions that we create with our digital marketing colleagues. We'll talk about things as simple as why this version of the slide converts better than the last one, all the way to broad concepts and aspects that are critical to digital marketing. So why are we even having this discussion? Fundamentally, when marketing and development teams get together, they're going to produce a solution. Where we're missing out is a firm shared understanding around the goals of that solution, how it's ultimately measured, and the capabilities that support it. Digital marketers have very specific measures that they're looking for when they create campaigns and different digital experiences. So as technologists, we really need to fall in line with that understanding so that we can be better allies in creating these solutions. A good example might be around a gym. Let's say that someone walks into a gym and they want to get in better shape, and the person behind the desk says, okay, turns around and takes them to some equipment and starts talking about the pulleys and the levers in the equipment and how the steel in the equipment was created. Is that factually accurate? Yes. Will that piece of equipment help the person? Most likely. However, it's misaligned with the goals that the person that walked in the door had. They want to understand, how do I get in better shape? And so what really should have happened is the person should say, well, to get in better shape, you want better cardiovascular capability. So let me show you this machine that helps enable that. So what needs to happen here, we need to be fluent in the ends and the measures of those ends in order to get the superior results. Now, in order to bridge this gap, we're going to cover a range of different critical concepts. We're going to start at what even is marketing, all the way to things like measurement, looking at conversions and statistics and measures around conversions, and a number of other broad concepts and aspects of digital marketing. So marketing in general can be a little bit scary for somebody who's a technologist because we come from a world of Boolean. It either works or it doesn't. It's either yes or no. Marketing has this soft aspect to it. And the way that marketing's evolved, though, there definitely is that artistic part of it that helps to define brands, does things like artistic collateral around different initiatives. But there's also a very scientific component. And so as things have evolved and we now have a lot of tooling and technology, there's a tremendous amount of science behind what we're doing. So ultimately, marketing today is a blend of both art and science. Why does marketing even exist? Well, if we think back before Industrial Revolution, specialization, we had close-knit communities of people. When that person needed maybe food or a particular product or service, they had somebody right next to them that supplied it. But as specialization increased and ultimately industrial revolutions took place, the people who needed certain products or services and the people that supplied those products or services could be very far apart. And so there needed to be a way to either advertise out to the universe that, hey, we in fact have these products and services, or to just have people have general awareness that you do. Marketing is more than advertising. It actually has to do with a whole life cycle of how people are viewing the products and services that they have and how they're positioning them to effectively satisfy not only their own company, but the people consuming them. So, how did we get to where we are today, and where does digital fit in? John Wanamaker, or at least we think it was him that said this, says, half the money I spent on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And as we look through history and how marketing's evolved, but even prior to internet technical advances, we've always been concerned with how can we scope in our efforts to make the most out of our investments in marketing. Traditionally, there's been something called a marketing mix that started around a 4P model, What this meant is that what product are we producing to sell? What price are we setting it at? How are we ultimately going to raise awareness around it? And how will we place it into the marketplace? What's happened though is there's been a whole transition where this started as a product, as an I type of centric model, us, but it's moved over to a 4C customer centric model. So what solution are we providing that is going to give value to this customer? What is our customer willing to pay? So I'm not going to go through this exhaustively, but it sets the tone for this evolution as we're leading up to digital, where the emphasis has switched from us and what we produce to our customers. If we think about market research and analysis that's historically gone into selecting segments, groups of people to target with marketing efforts, we've done things along the lines of demographics. So essentially, what's the person's bio? What geography are they in? Are they male or female? To psychographics, different types of lifestyles that the person might have, what particular social class is that person affiliated with. As this evolution's continued, it's really interesting. Forrester has proposed a behavior-based model for doing some of this market research and analysis that's in a way an evolution from demographics all the way toward this behavioral way to view people. Now, this isn't a formal evolution, but this is just an interesting insight as we look around how companies are trying to understand target markets that they can interact with. What's a brand? You hear that word thrown around all the time, online brand management. And in this picture, for those people who aren't automobile enthusiasts, we fundamentally have the exact same car. The only difference is that one wears a Porsche badge and the other wears a Volkswagen badge. And what's interesting is that even though the products are virtually identical, if you think about Toyota and then Lexus, very similar physical products, but branded in much different ways, our gut has a certain reaction to that. And that's what marketing enables. We now have psychological, mental associations with the brand for a particular physical item or service. As we look at how marketing's evolved, a lot of aspects of digital marketing are simply continuations of things that had always existed in traditional media. There are obviously exceptions like the web itself, but the different aspects of what ends up residing within that web experience comes from things already existing like audio and imagery and aspects that were part of traditional marketing. What's really happened though is a move from marketing being push-centric to leveraging the web in a very pull-centric type of model. It gives digital marketers a very unique opportunity to start to build and create experiences that pull people in on the basis of innately being aligned with those people's wants and needs. Let's think about a dorm room for a moment. The reason that this is important kind of gives us a window into the future. I myself recently canceled my cable television and do everything through Netflix and Hulu. And if we go into a dorm room, it's almost a step further. Take a look around for a television or a radio. You're simply not going to find it. Following on the lines of television and radio, traditionally organizations have basically broadcast products and services in the light that their brand wanted. It was very much a lecture out to particular groups. In the present, the markets are conversations. So the Clue Train Manifesto outlines some aspects of this, but fundamentally we can't just go out anymore and say what our product or service is. It's truly a discussion with a community of people, and the brand is almost collectively defined across all those groups of people and within our discussion. 76% of consumers don't believe organizations tell the truth in advertisements. And you can see with the advent of different social networking capabilities, when we look at reviews, whether it's Amazon or Yelp around various products and services, people are much more likely to believe their peers per the clue train model than an organization simply broadcasting. So, if anything, digital marketing isn't actually about technology at all. Technology merely affords you increasing diverse and relevant ways to connect with people. This is from Understanding Digital Marketing, and is a great way just to quickly sum up and think about what digital marketing is. It's really about having that conversation through a bunch of different new avenues. It doesn't change how you go about having that conversation. Let's look at the history of web publishing, because when we think about digital marketing, really the web is the root. Now, of course, we have things like YouTube and Spotify and all these different channels, Twitter, but really the core history is about web publishing. Here is the reason it's important. Traditionally, the web was something that was managed by a handful of individuals who were technologists. Now, this is maybe somewhat obvious, but what this has done in this day and age, 2013, we still have a fairly technical group managing the web. And these people might not know anything about marketing or be aligned to marketing in any way. And this is the gap that we're trying to address. Now, to create web content, it's completely been democratized. My mother can create content online. She doesn't need sophisticated knowledge or tooling. So we've definitely moved past that hurdle for at least trivial content contribution. When we think about what the web has become, there's one thing that we could take away from this presentation that is the key. The web is about conversions. Websites do not exist to rack up page views. Websites solely exist for conversions. This is from a business standpoint. Wikipedia might be different. In this case, from a business standpoint, we're looking at conversions. So what is a conversion? Anytime that we're working with marketing, this is a key item that there are a range of metrics around. We're trying to engage our users in a deeper way. So that means if somebody comes to our website, they're a prospect, customer, partner, are we ultimately providing an experience with them that's targeted toward them where they maybe sign up for a webinar, download a PDF, or transact with us? So with conversions, we're able to start to get a lens onto all of those activities and use those as barometers for the health of our inbound marketing efforts. What could a conversion be? These are some good examples to give us a little context when we think about all the different conversions, or sometimes called micro conversions, for things like somebody who maybe left a comment on our blog or tweeted one of our pages from our site. These are all aspects of conversion. These are all important points that we can measure and use as stepping stones in somebody's interaction with our brand. As technologists, this is where we need to get smart and educated. What we can do is help people to lift their CRO, or conversion rate optimization. That's what we're focused on as technologists. We've got to give people the best engine to help them convert. A really good discussion around this whole process and how it works is given by Dharmesh Shah from HubSpot. And because as we go through this process and interact with people in a way that's a lot more focused to enable us as organizations to convert, we've got to remember humans are human. We can't beat them over the head with all sorts of buttons and extremely deliberate information to say, you've come to our site, you're converting. What we really just want to be conscious of is that a web page is not just a web page. A web page we want to build and set up with a strategy and purpose around its measurement. Because at the end of the day, if we're blatant with things, we're going to turn people off and we're not going to get repeat business. Measurement. We are never going to look at measurement the same way again. If you've ever logged into any nice analytics tool, it looks awesome. You've got graphs and charts and meters and gauges. But the problem is, those are vanity metrics. So for the most part, anything that you're looking at in an analytics tool that you haven't configured to align it with your business goals and the metrics that are important to you, those are just pretty gauges to look at. If we think about it this way, what if somebody said, I did 37? Well, that's great. Or is it? Context is everything. And this is why when we look at measurement, we ultimately have to tie it back to our business goals. It can't just be, well, we had 10% more page views, because although that makes us feel good, that doesn't tell us what it did to our actual business. So there is an excellent blog article on Occam's Razor by Avinash where he details a lot of things around the metrics that we ultimately want to look for. So when we're thinking about analytics, we want to look at conversions. We want to start analyzing within segments. We want to look for patterns around loyalty. What we don't want to do is what Avinash calls data puking, just throwing tons of numbers and information and a lot of it ending up ultimately being meaningless. Things that people love to see like page views or most viewed pages, that doesn't necessarily help us. We need things that again are tied back to the conversions that we're trying to influence. Here's an example of some things that we could call outcomes of value. We think about what's the action, what does it pertain to, and what's our measure. If you can't take your analytics and apply some terms like this to them, you're going to have a lot of trouble truly understanding how to adjust your experience for users without this type of guidance. Here are some must-know terms around analytics. Conversion rates could be applied to a number of things, but fundamentally, going back to the star diagram with all the different ways we can convert people, we want to, if we can, tie back the rate of the viewership to converting to one of those many conversion types. And if we can, even get it down to the level of a particular segment. So meaning maybe I'm trying to convert certain people within a certain geography. Or maybe the conversions that I'm working on are part of a campaign, and I just want to look at those people within the campaign who are going through that certain path to try to convert. Micro conversions. Sometimes we might not always get a product purchase, but what if we could get somebody to retweet one of our tweets about a particular page on our site? What if we could get somebody to comment on one of our blogs about a product or service we have? Those can be looked at as micro conversions, and those are definitely important. Bounce rate. How many times does somebody reach our site, not look at another page, and just leave? This is a really critical metric because maybe we have pages that aren't optimized well for people to be able to find them, but when they do find them, they're totally misaligned to what that person was searching for. Abandonment rate. This is similar to bounce rate, but it's how far does somebody go in a particular process till they exit it. If we have a 3-page sign-up form and people are leaving on the last page, is there some challenge there that we could resolve to reduce the abandonment rate? And finally, cost per conversion. Anytime we're looking at running a campaign and potentially doing things like paid search or banner ads, there are a lot of aspects going on to what ultimately supports a conversion. And we can do some simple math to figure out how much is that costing us. Final point, as a technologist, never, ever, ever mention the word hits. Hits is a legacy term from old web analytics software that never made any sense anyway. We need to start speaking in these terms when we look at analytics. So, analytics aren't just about what page a person goes to. It's about a whole path and experience that individual goes through as they're interacting with our brand. And it can actually cross all sorts of different channels. If we think about people's patterns and habits in general, and I think we all do this, we do what's called showrooming. That means that anytime that we're interested in a product or service, we actually go to a whole variety of different channels to get our information. If we're at a store, there's a really good chance that if we see something that we think is a good product, we're going to pull out our mobile phone and double check. People check at least 4 channels when they do this. And that speaks to the amount of brand consistency, the messaging consistency that makes sense across a variety of channels and why that's important. Let's think about a sample analytics journey here, and this is one that I think a lot of us have gone through. We hear about a product or a service from a friend. We visit the site for that product or service. We might ultimately sign up and become a fan of that product or service, might read some reviews on another site about that product or service, and continue through all these stages until we make a purchase. But things don't end there. We might then go on to Twitter and talk about how satisfied or dissatisfied we are with that particular product or service. So when we think about analytics, anything that we look at here that we feel is significant, that we should be looking at, maybe it's, hey, there's this great CNET review that 80% of people that read it are coming in and purchasing. You know, we're seeing that they're clicking through part of a link on CNET to our site and purchasing. Maybe we want to promote that CNET review.